This is the executive summary of Dr. Alexis Jay's 2014 Rotherham inquiry. It's pretty bloody horrific. It's been a few years since I've read through it, so I figure we'll go through it again and then we'll see if there's any evidence to suggest that she might be right that's come out in the succeeding years. There is, of course, a full report behind this, but let's go on with what's happened since. No one knows the true scale of the sexual exploitation in Rotherham over the years. Our conservative estimate is that approximately 1,400 children were sexually exploited over the full inquiry period from 1997 to 2013. I believe that's very conservative. In over a third of the cases, children affected by sexual exploitation were previously known to the services because of child protection and neglect. It's hard to describe the appalling nature of the abuse that the child victims suffered. They were raped by multiple perpetrators, trafficked to other cities and towns in the north of England, abducted, beaten and intimidated. There were examples of children who had been doused in petrol and threatened with being set alight, threatened with guns, made to witness brutally violent rapes and threatened that they would be next if they told anyone. Girls as young as 11 were raped by large numbers of male perpetrators. This abuse is not confined to the past but continues to this day. In May 2014, the caseload of specialist child sexual exploitation team was 51. More CSE cases are held by other children's social care teams. There were 16 looked after children who had identified by children's social care as being at serious risk of sexual exploitation or having been sexually exploited. In 2013, the police received 157 reports concerning child sexual exploitation in the borough. Over the first 12 years covered by this inquiry, the collective failures of political and officer leadership were blatant. From the beginning, there was growing evidence that child sexual exploitation was a serious problem in Rotherham. This came from those working in residential care and from youth workers who knew the young people well. Within social care, the scale and seriousness of the problem was underplayed by senior managers, if you can believe it. At an operational level, the police gave no priority to CSE, regarding many child victims with contempt and failing to act on their abuse as a crime. More on that in a minute. Further stark evidence came in 2002, 2003, 2006, with 3 reports known to the police and council, which could not have been clearer in their description of the situation in Rotherham. The first of these reports was effectively suppressed because some senior officers disbelieved the data it contained. This had led suggestions of a cover-up. The other 2 reports set out the links between CSE, drugs, guns and criminality in the borough. These reports were ignored and no action was taken to deal with the issues that were identified in them. In the early 2000s, a small group of professionals from key agencies met and monitored large numbers of children known to be involved in CSE or at risk, but the managers gave little or no help or support for their efforts. A senior level in the police and children's social care continued to think that the extent of the problem, as described by the youth workers, was exaggerated, and seemed intent on reducing the official numbers of children categorised as CSE, so define them out of being victims. At an operational level, staff appeared to be overwhelmed by the numbers involved. There were improvements in responsive management from about 2007 onwards. By 2009, the Children's Social Care Service was acutely understaffed and overstretched and struggling to cope with demand. Seminars for elected members and senior officers in 2004-2005 presented the abuse in the most explicit terms. After these events, nobody could say, "We didn't know." In 2005, the present council leader chaired a group to take forward the issue, but there is no record of its meetings or conclusions apart from 1 minute, which is a note. Doesn't tell us what that is there here. By far the majority of the perpetrators was described as Asian by the victims, which means of Pakistani heritage. Yet throughout the entire period, councillors did not directly engage with the Pakistani heritage community to discuss how best they could jointly address the issue. Some councillors seemed to think that this was a one-off problem, which they hoped would go away. Several staff described their nervousness about identifying the ethnic origin of perpetrators for fear of being thought racist. Others remembered clear direction from their managers not to do so. So that's where I'm going to stop, because that's all stuff that we can demonstrate, right? And there's actually more. There's a lot more. So let's start with the cover-up, which came right from the top. The Prime Minister at the time, Gordon Brown. He allegedly urged police not to investigate Muslim grooming gangs. So the former North West Chief Prosecutor alleged that the Home Office ordered police to ignore grooming gang claims in 2008. Right? I guess this guy's a racist. Nazir Afzal, traditional British name, probably a goddamn racist, must just hate Muslims, told the BBC that in 2008 the Home Office sent a circular email to all police forces calling on them not to investigate the sexual exploitation of young girls in towns and cities across the UK. That's the Labour Party. That's the fucking Labour Party. Speaking on Radio 4's programme, Mr. Afzal, the former North West prosecutor, who reversed the Crown Prosecution Service decision and successfully prosecuted the notorious Rochdale rape gang, said, "You may not know this, but back in 2008, the Home Office sent a circular to all police forces in the country saying, as far as these young girls who are being exploited in towns and cities, we believe they have made an informed choice about their sexual behaviour, and therefore it is not for you police officers to get involved in." It's infuriating, isn't it? UKIP spokesman for families and children Alan Craig hit out saying, if Mr. Afzal is right, then it indicates that the Home Office knew about the rape gangs, sexual crimes against underage girls across the country, and willfully instructed the police not to investigate the claims. Alan Craig has been absolutely stellar on the issue of grooming gangs. I've heard a number of speeches he's given on the subject, and he is accurate as far as I can see, right? And here's an example of this. Here's a grooming gang victim. I was raped by more than 100 men, but police arrested me and not them. She was treated as the perpetrator while she was being raped by adult men. 100 of them. As a vulnerable lost teenager, Cassie Piked was raped by more than 100 men. Yet it was Cassie, not her string of vile attackers, who the police repeatedly arrested. It began when she was a troubled 11-year-old, eventually drove her to attempt suicide. But for 5 hellish years, the authorities turned a blind eye. Officers in Halifax knew Cassie was being trafficked around the country and to be abused by multiple men. When her rapist plied her with drugs to make it easier to force her into sex, police issued the teenager a warning for possessing them. It's like on the moral landscape of the country, Muslim men just don't exist. They're not, if you'd say, right, this is a map of everyone who's a moral actor, and you see a bright shining light of every person in the country, you'd be like, yeah, these are all moral, and maybe you see a dimmer one for someone who had a mental disability or something. But Muslim men apparently just don't exist. When a teenager is just found with drugs in a house full of a bunch of Muslim men who she thinks are her boyfriends, she's the criminal. It's not them, it's her. They didn't do nothing. Fucking... You gotta laugh or else you're gonna cry, right? Incredibly, they even arrested her on suspicion of facilitating a child sex offence when she and another underage girl got into an abuser's car. That's right! She said, I was arrested around 5 times in total, but nothing ever seemed to happen to the men who were abusing me. No wonder I thought I was to blame. I was so hurt and confused, especially when they suggest it was my fault that another girl had been abused. I was only 15 and they were in complete control of my life. How could they suggest it was me that was the criminal? Good question! Let's ask Gordon fucking Brown, shall we? Fuck me. Fucking hell, man. It's really infuriating. So, allegations of a cover-up coming right from the very top, from the Home Office when the Labour Party are in charge. It's really fucking infuriating to hear that all of this seems to be coming out now, right? Allegations that the police were instructed to do nothing because of instructions from the fucking Home Office. Who knows if that's true or not? I wasn't in government at that time, but that guy was, so maybe he knows more than me. What about this MP, a Labour MP, of course, Naz Shah, who shared a tweet telling sex abuse victims that they should keep their mouths shut for the sake of diversity? It sounds like a parody, right? In fact, it was a parody. In fact, it was a fucking parody, right? The Labour MP retweeted and liked a tweet from a parody account of a newspaper columnist, Owen Jones, that said, those abused girls in Rotherham and elsewhere just need to shut their mouths for the good of diversity. She liked and fucking shared it. How much more of a cover-up do we need? How much further through the fucking Labour Party does this go? Oh, well, by the way, one of Labour's Muslim peers, a former Labour peer, has been charged with being part of a grooming gang in 1971 to 1974. Fuck me. Where does it end? Well, it ends with people like Sarah Champion, the Labour MP for Rotherham, who decided, look, this is a problem that we might actually have to talk about. Well, she got absolute fury. You can imagine what she was called. She was called a racist by the floppy left, as she describes them, saying people are too scared to speak out about the racial aspect of sex gangs. Well, that does seem like the case, but of course, she had to apologise for the way she had said this. She had to apologise for her poor choice of words. We are literally watching the Labour establishment cover up the results of the cultural enrichment that they unleashed on the country, and when someone speaks out about it, she's the bad guy. How dare you use a poor choice of words to describe the systematic failures of the Labour and local councils and the police in this country when it comes to Muslim men gang raping young English girls? How fucking dare you use a poor choice of words? Unbelievably, I mean, obviously, she got death threats, so she had to have extra security, and these threats were probably fairly accurate. She was also, as Spike have covered very adequately here, persecuted. Absolutely persecuted by her own goddamn party. And obviously not just by her party, by their supporters, by people who are going along going, everyone's racist. But the thing is, it's that these poor children are seen as worthless by their abusers. And I mean that absolutely morally worthless. Literally as with less worth than an animal, right? And of course, the Guardian's take on this is amazing, right? Part of Alexis Jay's report was how the